Hey, it's syndicated radio talk show host, author, singer Al Cole, welcoming you to another edition of People of Distinction, the talk that gives an in-depth view of some of the most dynamic, intelligent, and successful people on the planet. I come from CBS Radio. My shows are nationally syndicated, and I've helped pave the way to treating women, guys too, with the dignity that they deserve. And I do that with my show, People of Distinction, aired on dignified radio networks, including the biggest airing CBS shows, and that's Apple's iTunes Radio Network. Under their professional news talk division, they air CBS shows, Fox News, NPR, BBC, and C-SPAN as well. Best talk in the country around the world on Apple's iTunes Radio Network under News Talk. And I want you to check out my website, peopleofdistinction.org. And you'll see a lot of the things that are happening with Al Cole from CBS Radio and the alignments that he has with people like Arianna Huffington, the great founder of the Huffington Post, and Dee Wallace, the actress who starred in one of the biggest films ever, Steven Spielberg's E.T., the Extraterrestrial. All of these things happening, and plus I'm coming from Major Media, which is CBS Radio. I'm a major media consultant, and what that means is I teach people who come to me and they ask the question, Al, I've got a book out, I've got a coaching program out, I've got other things that I do that are entrepreneurial, but I'm not really making a lot of money from them. What am I doing wrong? Well, I teach people how to understand media these days, and particularly digital media, and understand how to put core messages together during interviewing, and also how to professionally network with other professionals in the media and around the media, all of that stuff, to get a lot of content and contact development in what they do. Yeah, so if these are some of the things that you want to contact me about, contact me at alcoholic@gmail.com. You heard me right. That's ALCOLE. HOLIC@gmail.com. And I really want to thank my CBS radio listeners for coming up with that handle, Alcoholic. Seems like from day one my listeners have been saying, Al, we love what you're doing there, brother. In fact, we're hooked on it. We're Alcoholics. Yeah. And we're coming to a lady who she's going to be on my show here, but she's got a great handle too. Her name is Angelica Jasmine. Hey. Now, that's an exploratory name. I don't think that anybody else knows anybody that's ever been named Angelica Jasmine. So this lady, right from the get-go, is People of Distinction, because she's out there really helping people in different sorts of ways. And she's coming up with concepts that most people don't come up with. I'm going to give you this example. She's got a book out called Avarice Deception, The Lost Queen. Now, a lot of my listeners are going to say, well, gee, sounds interesting. Yeah, avarice deception, but what does it mean? Well, you know what? I'm going to put it this way. Angelica is going to really talk about the meaning, but I'm going to talk about People of Distinction stuff here. It's going to make you want to listen to Angelica. Now, most of my listeners, we know about alien life. We know about things that happen that we can't quite understand. We understand all of that stuff. But the big thing that we really need to understand is that taboos are killing us sometimes as everyday human beings. And maybe the alien life forces, maybe they have something to offer here. Maybe they're not into taboos as much. Maybe some of the things that we think, oh, it's too mechanical. Oh, no. Hey, maybe they are more love-oriented. Maybe if we incorporate a little bit more love in our lives and a little bit less of the taboos, we might be better off. And sometimes we think that that's alien, even though every single person on the planet, if they had to list the top 5 things in their life, love would be at the top, love-oriented things. And yet we deny that in our everyday lives. Because we're out there, 9 to 5 in that grind and, the hustle and bustle and the stress and everything. We need to get away from that. And sometimes we need to self-explore, get into some of the things that maybe we were into when we were kids. The innocence of love. Maybe that baby from whence we came that came out and said, wow, I'm here. I made it. I'm alive. I want to just love life the way that love loves me in that same way. So I think she's going to be talking about a lot of these things that we don't usually talk about in our lives. Some alien experiences, not bound to taboos, and that really offer some of the highest levels of love in our lives, maybe even spirituality. Whoa, we love this stuff on People of Distinction. And I want you to run to Amazon and also Barnes & Noble. You can order her book, Avarice Deception, The Lost Queen, at both of those places. Welcome, Angelica, to People of Distinction with Al Cole. It's really a pleasure to have you on today. How are you?
I am fantastic. Thank you so much for the honor of letting me be on your show.
Well, this is really my pleasure, too, because you come with a different sort of message and a very intelligent message, and I want to get it out there. And I will say that you were brought to me by Box Office Brand as well. A nice lady over there, Nicole Jensen, who is bringing me guests to my show. And so we want to give a little bit of spotlight to Box Office Brand as well. And Box Office Brand can be located, too, online at boxofficebrand.com. So go there, people. If you got a book that you want to move, they're great movers for you. Let's get back to Angelica right now. Tell us a little bit about this fascinating book that you have, Avarice Deception, The Lost Queen. How'd you come up with these concepts, Angelica?
Oh, the concepts. I am a huge science fiction person. I don't like the word geek or freak or anything like that. I just love science fiction, anything I can get my hands on. And as a matter of fact, I'm so much into like supernatural that I'm very upset that it's ending. My son told me, he's like, Mom, he goes, it's been on my whole life. This is not fair. So, but I mean, we're constantly, if it's Star Trek, if it's Star Wars, if it's Stargate, if it's anything to do with anything, we're into it. And I was actually watching a documentary that interviewed some astronauts from space, and Will Smith is the narrator. And it's called One Strange Planet. And it started, teaching humans what Earth was like as though it was an alien planet. Mm-hmm. And you learned so much of just the planet we live on. And, then you start, I go into 1,000 different documentaries on the universe, and astronomy's come so far, and then to find out that we're just a little dot in our solar system. We're so small compared to absolutely everything around us. And yet there's 7 billion people on this planet. And it's like, okay, they're possibly finding life in our own solar system. So if we're looking, then other intelligent life must be looking, because the universe is expanding. And it just gets me thinking, and I'm like, okay, honestly, what are the odds that if intelligent life is looking, as we are, that they would find us? Mm-hmm. And then you're just like, there's not, that's so insignificant that it's almost zero, so it's like, okay, but what's the likelihood that they would find life at all? Mm-hmm. And then that makes it higher, and it's like, okay, so what if intelligent life ran into intelligent life? What could happen? Was it intentional that it happened? How did, and so there just ends up being, there's so many exploratory questions with this. Mm-hmm. that I had to figure out where to settle, because I had about 15 to 20 different options of, where to start. And I ended up starting with the idea that what NASA now supports as far as theory of how our moon came to be was that there was another planet in our solar system in the Goldilocks zone, and they collided, and the moon basically got ripped out of our own planet. And now that's why it's so big and so close to us. So I kind of took that concept like, okay, if that were to happen, and intelligent art and life ended up on the moon and on the planet, then and they both developed intellectually but didn't know anything about each other, what would happen if they ever did collide? So that's the universe I created.
Wow. I'll tell you, I love the thought behind that, the concepts, the universe that you created. And that is we all have that ability to create the universe within our own consciousness. That's a big part of it. That word consciousness means so much more than we give it credit to mean, because we are creatives. We are that creative force of the universe, each one of us, just through the fact that we were born at all. I think it's almost impossible for anybody to imagine not being born. And it's much easier to explore reincarnation, being born many, many times, because the miracle is that we were born once, so why not have it, that same miracle recur many times. But to think of where would we have been if we were never born at all? And who are some of the people maybe who were never born at all? And so we are gifted right from the get-go by being born, having this great gift of consciousness, awareness of whatever we call life, and why not being discovered by other planetary beings, other what we call aliens. And we can be the aliens too, helping other planetary beings along. And as we do that, now we're spreading the love, and we're helping not only planet Earth, but we're helping a lot of other planets in the universe that could be drifting too. There's Pleiades. Sometimes we talk in terms of Pleiades. Sometimes we talk in terms of Sirius, other planetary galaxies and beings that could come into our planetary sphere as guardians, and maybe we can help them as guardians as well. Does your book get into anything revolving around Pleiades or Sirius at all?
It's mostly about. I'm not sure about that necessarily, of other universes colliding into their universes. Their whole concept of even going out to the stars was that they were out of minerals. And so they went to their moon saying, hey, our moon has minerals. Why not?
Mm-hmm.
And when they did that, they discovered that the moon has life on it. And it kind of freaked them out because the praetors who live on the planet literally were. I seen this as like a futuristic for humans if we're not careful with our own population growth, that they've literally gotten rid of all the habitats that animals could be in, and on Artemis there's no animals. It's just praetors because everything else is gone. And they have to mimic meat, and they have to do all this, and they just live for they live for profit, they live for the dollar, they live for success, and they don't pay too much attention to their surroundings. Yeah. It's just all about being successful. And then I took it on the Fury side, which lives on the terrain moon. They don't believe in any of that. They're very nature based. And there's a whole bunch of animals, and if they have to kill for food, then they actually have that ghost or that spirit becomes a part of them. Uh-huh. So they can't just kill to kill, because if they do that, then they'll be haunted. Yep. So they have to kill with a purpose and use the entire animal in order to let it rest. Mm-hmm. So they respect life extremely well. And then you have these two polar opposite species, one that believes in the afterlife, one that doesn't, running into each other. And they, not knowing either one existed, one of them's entire religious beliefs just kind of gets thrown out of the water, and they have to kind of, find their footing again. The other one's just like, we still need these minerals. What are we going to do about this? This is a problem, not a cool, there's more life. You know what I mean? Like
Mm-hmm.
they're just still trying to get rid of, everything to get what they want. So it causes both sides to have to change some mindsets, and it's it there's a lot of conflict. There's just a lot of conflict.
Yeah, I get it. And when we're talking about uh, what you're terming, alien life, that is actually all around us, and it's not alien. When we're talking about the use of minerals, and we're talking about synergies of some sorts, well, you have something that's going to be useful to us. We have something that's going to be useful to you. And you're talking about animals. Now, one of the things that you were talking about without using the word is blessing. When we bless others, and even if they're animals, and let's say that we need animals to subsist on, and we bless that animal that we have to consume, let's say, for our lives, and that animal synergizes somehow with our soul, and you were indicating that. We become partly what we consume that way. We've known for years, generationally, that we are what we eat. That's one of the platitudes that goes around, comes around. Platitudes are often based on basic truths. Let's talk about animals and how we can treasure animals and bless animals to our human use, and how animals can bless human beings to their animal use. Here on Earth, is that a possibility that we can do that without avarice?
Oh, without avarice. Oh my goodness. It's hard because the avarice people are so profitable that they spend all the money to not care.
Right?
I'm sorry, I don't mean to be so rude, but I
No, you're
mean,
right.
I'm just thinking of like even the oil industry and the plastic industries and things that we are relied so heavily upon, just as consumers. And consumers, we're so numb to it that we don't think about that, having all this extra packaging delivered to make sure nothing breaks is actually forcing an animal out of their home. Like the way that our supply chain for food and for consumer goods or anything is given to us, we're so it's like, as hunters and gatherers, you were right there. You knew what you were killing and you knew what you were supplying yourselves. But we've got have so many middlemen now that we don't even think about the consequences of what our actions are. Um, and we hear about it like, oh, the bees are starting to die, and if that happens, we're going to have major problems in our food chain. The toads are starting to have strange, uh, they're not turning out right. I'm sorry, I lost the word. Mutations, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
And then they have, there's just a lot of stuff that's going on, and you hear that they keep burning the rainforest when they now have been educated on crop rotation, but crop rotation takes too long and it's just easier to burn the rainforest. And it's like, okay, at some point we can't keep doing this, and I know that humans have come with the amazing ability to build up, unlike any other species on this planet, and we can only build up so high. And there's so much concrete, and places that used to never flood are now constantly flooding because we have so much concrete, because roads are just so easy to build. And we're not understanding the consequences of the smallest actions. And I'm hoping that by bringing this to light on a different world, that we can kind of reflect and see the numbness that we have for Earth
Mm-hmm.
itself.
Yeah, I get it. And, I'm going to suggest something here that I think might be useful. We teach people in this society, this avarice society, we teach people how to become mature, how to become successful right from the start. It's not good enough to be a baby. Now we have to teach you how to be a child. It's not good enough to be a child. We have to teach you now to be a teen. And it's not good enough to be a teen. All of this is preparation now for being a young adult. And that's preparation for maturation in another way, maybe raising your own family, buying a home, buying a car, buying this, buying that. What if we had a society that asks, well, how can we maintain the innocence of that baby that is first born? And maybe there are going to be certain ways that we can tap into that baby's consciousness and ask that baby, what would you like this world to do to help you to maintain that beautiful love consciousness that you have? I don't think that there are too many babies that want to be avaricious. I don't think that there are too many babies that want to take advantage of a situation, take advantage of other people. Babies just want to live and love, and they want to give that love and receive that love from others. If we could tap into whatever that special love energy is, and we can, because everybody was born a baby first. And we can now, instead of learning how to mature all the time, we can learn how to go back to our innocence, nature, looking around and just being comfortable with the things around us that are there, mineral sources, as you said, water sources, the beauty of nature itself. And now that comportment with nature could be the key to our salvation as a society. And if we start to do that, I think after a while it would be so natural for us to say to ourselves, wow, you're giving me so much love through your natural comportment with nature, with that innocence of love that you have, that I don't even want to consider this money world anymore. Let's be paid by love digits instead of monetary digits. Would that make any sort of sense there?
Yeah, actually, you're kind of getting ahead of me on the series release.
Oh, I see.
The way this is a trilogy series, and it is a young adult. So it starts off with a love story, because you know what teenage girl isn't going to love a love story. And then it moves on to certain things. And then the second book, which is called The Terrain Wars, is actually that we end up with two very smart scientists from Praetor trapped on Terrain, and they've lost all communication to their planet, and they have to learn how to accept nature. They literally have to go back and be like, whoa, what? You know, and to them, you know, they're like, here, let me do this, let me do that. And they get resistance from the people to a point like, why are you making the water be unnatural and flow this way? Why are you doing this? And they end up having to come up with some sort of compromise between the two of, we can help you, but don't help too much because we don't want to be you. You know what I mean? So it's, they end up in the, trapped on Terrain, and when they do get back to the planet, they can't stand the planet. They're just like, I don't like this. This is not the way that I like to, this is not the choice that I want anymore. Mm-hmm. So they get snapped back into the reality of, you know, nature and life and everything. But they have to somehow teach their entire world something that they've lost, and they lost a long time ago. So how do you do that? How do you bring an entire species to understand that this is important when they're so numb and don't even know it anymore?
Mm-hmm. The question of posing the question is very strong. Does your book, Avarice Deception, and particularly maybe the newer version of it, Terrain Wars, would that also offer some sort of answer to that question as well?
Terrain Wars more kind of introduces, the adjustment that they have to do on top of the natural people having to adjust to them. And then, so like when you start off with the Lost Queen, you find a lot of the Fury, which is the people from Terrain who are used to nature, stuck on this world of greed. And then you go to Terrain Wars and you find 2 Praetors trapped in all this nature. And then the third book, which is Paradigm Shifts, is going to have, them having to find that balance between the 2 worlds. So it's getting there. It's just, and it's so fun to play with it. I mean, I'm currently living Serena Gelsomino's life and family life, but at the end of this trilogy, there's so much more. Like, I could find almost any other family who has to adjust to all of this, and the changes and the mind-blowing concepts and things. It's almost never ending if you think about it.
Well, that's right. And think about this, people. This goes out to you, my listening audience. Think about ordering this book, Avarice Deception, by our special guest here today, Angelica Jasmine. Avarice Deception, The Lost Queen. And it's available on Amazon, Barnes & Noble. You can grab it, and you can learn. You can see, sometimes even just posing questions that are challenging, questions that might have answers that would be very edifying to our human spirit. Even just wanting to know some of those right questions is very, very elevating to us. We don't always have to answer these questions, but asking some of the right questions, wow, it gets around, it goes around, and people start to talk about, what do you think about this question? And then they start answers because of communication. So get into it, people. Let's communicate on high levels here. Avarice Deception, The Lost Queen, by our special guest, Angelica Jasmine. And you can order it at Amazon and also Barnes & Noble. We have some minutes left in the show, Angelica. You're coming out with some very, very strong concepts here for our future. Talking about our present with younger people, millennials and Gen Xers. Now, this sort of thing, exploratory thought, I think would be something that would gather the intelligence and the curiosity of many millennials these days, and maybe even whatever group is younger than the millennials, whatever they're called. You can't keep up with all of these names.
Right?
We live in a society where I believe that the millennials as a generation would have to be considered the least prejudiced generation of all time. And one of the reasons is because of the internet and all of the ways that you can meet people these days. And because we've had years and years of people getting to know each other from different racial groups and different, gender relationships and everything. So if we're talking about 20 years from now, 30 years from now, 40 years from now, if we're putting this into the phraseology of our society here on Earth, can we get to some of these places through the Gen Xers and more particularly through the millennials and maybe even more particularly through younger generations that are coming up that want to be more exploratory? What do you see the future happening that way?
I see. I can only talk for like America's side of it because of our freedom of rights, but I see that America's really good at absorbing the rights that they own. So I teach sophomores, and when I talk about what their grandparents went through for civil rights and what their parents went through for same gender rights, and what, just how recent it really is for these people, they come up with, yeah, that's nice, I can do what I want now. Like, you know what I mean? Like, it's just, it's accepted to them, and they don't accept that it was so hard to earn. And
Yeah.
if you try to pull them back to even 1920 and be like, women used to not be able to vote in this country,
Yeah.
they're just like, okay. And I'm like, all right, you guys are almost 18. Are you planning on registering to vote? Oh, no, I ain't gonna get into politics. And it's like, okay, that's your right, but that's not right.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So they just, it's, when we have the freedom to choose, it's kind of sad to see them not make the choice to do certain things, but it just is absorbed so quickly that they can't grasp the concept that it wasn't acceptable.
Mm-hmm.
And this generation, even teaching this generation, it's proven a little more challenging, because you're not competing as, teacher to teacher. Oh, this class is better than this class. It's like, is this class more interesting than the internet?
Mm-hmm.
So, you have to always be on your toes. You always have to, pull them in. And when I actually started teaching this year, I asked them, I was like, why are we learning this? What is the point? And I was like, it's history. I was like, of all subjects. I was like, what is the point? And they're like, what? And I was like, okay, imagine this. I was like, imagine if NASA came across the news and said, we've discovered all of these abandoned buildings on this planet, but there's no intellectual life to be seen. Here are the tools that we've found, but we only have pictures. There's no written historical record. And they're like, what? Where is it? How'd they get there? Who was born? And they start asking all these questions. And it's like, yeah. And I was like, now think about that. If we end up with World War III and we end up in this nuclear war that we're all nervous about, what's going to happen to Earth?
Mm-hmm.
All the intellectual life is going to be gone. All written record is on these phones and computers and on the internet. It's not really all that much written down. And somebody comes along and looks at our planet and can only have questions, and what footprint did we actually leave? And they're like, oh, you did not just do that. And I was like, but I did. And I was like, so my question to you is, why we're learning this is so we can actually go back, see where our ancestors messed up in their governments, so we don't make the mistakes in our governments to avoid that exact situation.
Yes, that's right. I agree. With freedom comes a tremendous responsibility as well. The responsibility of social consciousness as well as intellectual consciousness. Social consciousness, understanding that everybody means something in this world. Everybody has their individual talents. Everybody has something to offer. And those everybody's don't even have to be alive right now. They could be our ancestors. They could be future generations. We are not just living for ourselves as individuals. We're not even just living for ourselves now as part of a generation that exists. We're also living for all life that ever existed and making manifest the glory of whatever they stood for at certain points, like you're saying, back in the 1920s, and women's suffrage. And before that, maybe other things, that pioneers who maybe just wanted to make life better for their kids, and maybe they did, and maybe they suffered a little bit because of doing that. But the kids, they're having a better life, and those kids have kids. And looking ahead to other generations, we have to make it better for our seed as well, other generations. So you're on the right track there. And when you say sophomores, you mean sophomores in high school that you teach?
Yes. Yeah, 10th grade.
Yeah,
yes.
The 10th graders. So let's cap off the show with this. Where do you see, as a high school teacher, that generation going to in the future in terms of that social consciousness that you're talking about, in terms of keeping some of the integrity of this society, if it were just wiped away, like you said, and nothing but ashes or, no intelligent life anymore. But still, that energy around us from that society, that energy of love or awareness is something which never is depleted. Where do you see this generation going to help the cause of future generations and the cause of Earth right now? 20 years from now, maybe even 30 years from now, maybe 10 years or 5 years from now?
Um, I mean, these generations are showing they have a lot of competition.
Mm-hmm.
And like even my artist, Jocelyn Manna, she was a sophomore when she drew the cover and the images on the inside, and she's trying to compete almost nationwide for schools. And I know she's interested in like Virginia's Commonwealth Art Program, and she's interested in Savannah's College of Arts in Georgia, and she lives in Texas. And she's just like, I have to compete with the entire nation because the communication is so open and it's so much out there that it's the talent that would have never possibly been discovered before is being, posted online all the time. And so I find them to be more competitive than most generations, but I also find them kind of stubborn. They like to learn things the hard way. Mm-hmm. And I know that, most people do, but I'm seeing it more lately in children at this age than I used to. Like, usually they kind of learn more right around the middle school age of, ooh, yeah. But it's starting to get pushed to like around their age. So I know when they do go out into the workforce and they do start deciding if they're going to be representing, environmental rights versus, profit and things of that nature, it's going to take them a minute to come to grasp of what their footprint is actually leaving. I think that they're maturing a little bit later because they are so worried about competing that they're forgetting the consequences of their actions.
Yeah, look at that. And I'm going to cap it off with a couple of cents of my own here on People of Distinction after you get a chance to order this book again, Avarice Deception, by our special guest, Angelica Jasmine. And you can order it at Amazon or Barnes & Noble. I'm going to cap it off with this, Angelica. We owe nature a debt of gratitude because if we were born into a world that was devoid of the beautiful streams and the beautiful mountaintops and the beautiful maybe rock formations, all of these things, the trees and the foliage in the fall, and all of the beauty that we sometimes don't even see because of our busy hustle-bustle lives, it would be much, much less engaging life-wise. Human beings are not enough to fill the void. We have to look out for nature. And if nature is enough for us to value at any point in our lives, then it's enough for us to preserve for the future as well. For other generations coming into this life scope, we are not the first generation. Everybody living right now could be called one generation in that entirety of, hey, we're breathing life right now. We're under the same sun. We're basically going through the same sorts of socioeconomic experiences. So other generations that are coming up, we have to preserve at least what we want to preserve of the beauty of nature. And there are ways that we can do that scientifically. Climate change is a tremendously important subject that so many younger people are discovering because they know not only are they going to inherit this world, but their children and their children's children are. And we need to be conscious of that. That is a big, big message that I've been getting out of this conversation with you, as well as other messages about, alien life forms and not sticking to taboos as much. All of that stuff, going back to some of the innocence from whence we came. All of that, I congratulate you for standing behind and doing your work in so many different ways. As an author, also as a teacher. As a teacher, teaching, everyday kids how to mature, how to grasp life a little bit more and a little bit greater. You're doing tremendous work. And then within other areas that you might be involved in, all of that is so very, very vital. Keep it up, Angelica, with all of your wonderful work. And it's really been a pleasure having you on People of Distinction with Al Cole today. This has really been great.
Thank you so much. Thank you. And yes, definitely look out for the worlds. I know that some generations they're trying to bury globalizations, like climate effects, so much that because the prophet has more money than the planet, and I had more than a few kids at the beginning of this year tell me I have no idea what global warming is. I have no idea how to stop it. I have no idea. And I'm like, okay, let me explain. And I explained to them, what happened to Venus and, what carbons are being trapped in the atmosphere. And I explained to them about the holes in our atmosphere and where we're thin and what's happening. And they perked up. They're like, oh my gosh. And I'm like, yeah. And I was like, and you have 2 more years and you vote. And then you vote for these people who decide to preserve the climate or to vote for profit. And they're like, that's a huge responsibility. Yeah. And I'm like, yes, it is. And I was like, and it needs to be taken a lot more seriously than it is. And I had a few people thank me for it after they looked into it. So
absolutely. And we thank you too, my listeners. For all the great work that you're doing, and stick to it. Have that sense of social responsibility as much as anything else. That is really, really wonderful. And one more time, order that book, Avarice Deception, on Amazon, Barnes & Noble, by Angelica Jasmine. And remember from whence she came. She came from Box Office Brand. And you can run to their website, too, and get involved in all of that great work. If you have a book that you want to get out there, they can help you to move that book. BoxOfficeBrand.com. Thank you so much, Angelica, for being my special guest on People of Distinction, and we wish you all the very, very best.
Thank you, and it's been a pleasure.